in the grand scheme of things. Now, one of the other, maybe the biggest story in sports overall today is not even on the field. It's in sports media, where a ton of big-name personalities from ESPN have been let go in their latest round of layoffs. And ESPN as a company is in the struggles right now. Everyone's like, there's not a company out there that's like, hey, everything's going exactly as we planned. Like, everybody's adjusting. Disney and ESPN are no different. But a lot of the money now going to pay their main personalities, which are Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee and Mike Greenberg. Those are the big three for them right now. Those would be the three highest paid people at ESPN. And let's see who's on the list, Craig. Matt Hasselbeck, Steve Young, Keyshawn Johnson, Jalen Rose, Susie Colbert, Todd McShay. 20 people overall.
Yeah, I didn't have a list in front of me. Ashley Brewer, who was the late night Sports Center host quite often when I tuned in, and I think she's like married to Frank Kaminsky. I think so. The former Wisconsin star. I believe that's right. But yeah, she was part of it as well. And also just saw David Pollock off of College Game Day now because he's been let go. So that's interesting, an interesting addition. But yeah, man, I mean, there was the expectation that these were, or really, it was known that these were coming. And this is not the first or the second or even the third round of cuts.
Neil Everett essentially was in this because he turned down a pay cut a couple weeks ago.
They've been happening pretty regularly at different intervals. But yeah, I mean, Susie Colbert, that's a long time.
27 years.
She was there at ESPN, so that's an institution that'll be leaving. There's several people that I think probably aren't known at all, really, or to a far lesser extent. But there's some names in there. I mean, the Max Kellerman and the Jay Williams. Is Jay Williams on that list? Did you just say him?
Keyshawn is.
Okay, well, Keyshawn and Max – is Max Kellerman on that list?
Yeah, Max Kellerman.
Max Kellerman and Keyshawn were on a radio show in the mornings.
Jay's gone too. Yeah.
Who?
Jay is gone.
Jay Will's gone? Okay, yeah. So all three of those guys, that was kind of predicted because, first of all, ESPN Radio has basically thrown up their hands on the national radio side of things. I mean,
Jason Fitz, one of those guys, guy.
ESPN Radio is a shell of what it was nationally, and that's just a sad truth, but it's true. And they had a problem with that morning show with and really, I mean, replacing Mike and Mike, like that was an institution for so long for them, and they've kind of just not been able to, like, they've just thrown people together. It's just like, hey, here's a guy, and here's a guy, and here's a girl, and let's just give them a show. And it'll be Jay, Pete, and Chuck in the mornings. And but you got to have some chemistry. You got to have some substance to it. And I think they just threw three people together who have names, and Kellerman and Jay Will and Keyshawn, and they're like, this will work. And then it didn't work. And it was pretty clear the writing was on the wall for that show. I didn't know that meant that they would all get let go, but
well, even before that, I mean, it was Zubin Mahente before Max, so
and then
it was
he
a
got
disaster.
Sick. Yeah, he got sick pretty early on. I think like diabetes or something like that. Yeah, and then he had to step away. And then you're right. It was kind of doomed from the start. But it clearly wasn't working, and I didn't know that meant they were going to move on entirely from those guys. Like, I was surprised to see Jalen Rose on here. I just figured he's kind of an institution for their NBA coverage. But, yeah, that morning show wasn't surprising. Maybe that all three got fully let go. But it's really just a shame. I mean, the business got bloated and fat and happy there for a while, and now it's cutting time, and they're looking to save money everywhere they can. And so, a lot of big names or a lot of familiar names and some totally unexpected that are interesting to see and kind of sad to see as well. I saw Scott Van Pelt was doing an interview with, who was it? Maybe like Jimmy Traina or something from SI, and he asked him if he would still be doing SportsCenter in 3 years, and he's like, no chance. And it wasn't because of ESPN cuts and all that, but I assume like that age for one. He's been doing that for so long now. Like, you just want to do something different too. But I think he also looks around and sees like there's like 200 less people here than when I started this show, and that's got to be weighing, I think, on everybody up there's mind as well, and just sports media or media in general. So interesting times for sure.
Yeah, and look, the times do change. LaFonso Ellis, friend of the show,
had him on before.
Had him on a lot of times. Let go today as one of it. Like it seems like everything kind of mirrors each other. NFL Countdown, NBA guys. Van Gundy is one of the most popular NBA game analysts and really good. And they have a really
or hated. I mean, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah. I enjoy that everything that they do when I'm watching the finals. I think that's a good trio there with Mark Jackson and Mike Breen's one of the best play-by-play guys there is. But yeah, Jeff Van Gundy's out, and I don't think almost all of this, none of it's really about talent or getting better people in. It's about getting cheaper people in. I mean, for example, I'll just give you Keyshawn Johnson and Jalen Rose as an example. There are younger players that have not been in media as long that will cost them less money that they can come in and do similar jobs in whatever the new ESPN looks like. So because guys are retiring all the time and they're new to media all the time, they can move people along. And I'm sure this is not the end because this doesn't seem to stop. But there are. Jason Fitz, by the way, who's, if you don't listen to ESPN radio, he's essentially been their nighttime guy or evening guy for a very long time through several different radio show incantations. And so incantations are, that's not the right word, but incarnations of that show. But there's so many things, and it's a bummer. But most of them will probably land on their feet. I don't think Steve Young needs the job.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are former athletes who probably made enough money to be fine. I don't know. Don't know any of them personally. I enjoyed some of them, and I hate anybody losing their jobs when it's just, cost cutting or things of that nature. But it's got to trim down the machine to be able to pay, it really is kind of a mirror. It's going to turn into a mirror of our country in many ways. Yeah, where you've got like 5 people who are making gobs and gobs of money and then a big drop off and then probably a lot of other people who are making, whatever they're making because, yeah, it does seem like a lot of probably the middle class or upper middle class of maybe some of the gigs here were carved out and done away with. So, yeah, hate it, like I said, for the people involved, but we'll see how they do with McAfee once that launches, and then I'm sure there'll still be plenty of Stephen A. and all that kind of stuff too. So they'll have content. It's just it's a lot more of a trimmed down version than what they've had.
Max Kellerman, by the way, was making in the neighborhood of $5 million a year, and Keyshawn Johnson was in the second year of a 5-year deal was around $18 million.
So I think you can make a pretty strong case with it. Maybe that wasn't worth $10 million for those two. Yeah, I mean that's understandable from the ESPN point of view.
Yeah, I mean, look, and so Keyshawn Johnson, Jalen Rose probably making about the same. You would think maybe Rose been there a little bit longer.
Rose probably makes more than that.
Maybe more than that. So you've got people who've been there a long time, which means that they've got probably raise. You're going to try to find somebody younger and different. When we come back, we focus on BYU with Jay.